James W. Milliken, Vietnam War vet, thank you for sitting in for this interview today. It's good to see you, sir.
It's good to be here.
And we should tell our viewers that this gentleman was almost killed 43 different times that you're aware of during your service in Vietnam in 1968 and 1969, correct?
That's right.
And you're also an author. I'm going to show people the book,
Okay.
Enter and Die. Now, interestingly enough, you wrote this book 37 or 38 years after your military service to pay tribute to the guys in your particular unit, correct?
That's right.
That's a story in itself. James, tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and your family life.
Okay, I grew up in Elwood City, Pennsylvania for the first 10 years of my life. And from there, my father was transferred to Westchester, Pennsylvania. And I've lived in Westchester ever since being 10 years old. I went to Grove City College for 4 years, and I had a degree in accounting from Grove City College. And after the military, I went back to college and got a master's degree in finance from Widener University. And I got married in 1973 to Linda Lehman, and we have two daughters, Christine and Susan, and I have one grandchild at this time.
So you grew up in the 60s. You were how old in 1968 when you enlisted?
I was 23 years old.
Okay, so by 1968, the Vietnam War wasn't so popular, and the country was sort of splitting apart at that point. You went in during a very controversial time.
That's right.
The Tet Offensive was in 68?
It was. I really didn't want to go into service, and I enlisted the day before I was going to be drafted, and I tried to do everything to get out of going to Vietnam, but finally I realized that that's where I was going to end up, and I accepted that. And as much as I went through, I don't regret anything at all, and I've learned a lot from it, and it's been a lot of good things have happened to me because of it.
The war was controversial and certainly challenging and complicated, not only at home but for the soldiers who fought. Jim, how did you? What was your philosophy when you arrived in Vietnam? You had to get used to brand new surroundings, and many guys went over there thinking it was a death sentence. How did you make sense of the war day to day in your own life? How did you make sense of it?
Well, first thing when I got to Vietnam, I got the impression that this war was bigger than anything I imagined. I could see how the economics and the political aspects were far greater than the military aspects of the war. In other words, it wasn't going to be, the war wasn't going to be won on the battlefield. It wasn't even, I could see that when the first day that I got there, and it kind of made me, deflated me in a way, because no matter how hard the military would work and do things in Vietnam, that wouldn't be the final outcome of what was going to happen, and because of there was too much politics in it, just like today. It's kind of a shame, and so I had an attitude that I got to take care of myself, and our buddies, and we had a platoon philosophy of bring everybody back alive, every day, and we didn't really care whatever our mission was, whether we succeeded in it or not. The main thing was bring everybody back, because we prevailed, and we ended up becoming a very good platoon, and did very well in all our missions, and in fact we became one of the best platoons in the 9th Division, and they recognized that by giving us a lot of tough tasks to perform.
And the book you wrote, Enter and Die, we're looking at it right now.
Yes.
Why did you wait 37 years to write this book?
Well, initially I couldn't write it when I came back because everybody hated Vietnam vets, and it was nobody would have. I would have been scorned to write the book, and I wanted to write the book. I didn't have the time until I retired. I had a lot of work that I had to do. I worked long hours, and I just didn't have the time. To write a book, you really have to dedicate yourself like it's a job, and that's the way I looked at it. It was a job, and I wanted to do the best that I could, and I wanted to be very truthful and honest about what I wrote about, and I wanted to write about the time period. That I didn't want to have any outside influences from that time period. In other words, or what I thought. So when I wrote the book, it's what I thought at that moment in time, and I had a lot of letters that I wrote home, 75 letters that people kept, and I used that for a lot of the description. I had a lot of photographs that I got from a combat photographer that I used, and I also had a lot of research that I got from different museums to write the book. So I did a lot of research at the time, which in order to write the book. I wanted the book to be a historical piece of literature that somebody could look at it 100 years from now and understand what the Vietnam War was about. And I also wanted to give credit to all the guys that I served with.
Now, Jim, this book, Enter and Die, you self-published. If someone is interested, someone who's watching this video, is interested in picking up a copy of the book, how can they do that?
Well, they could go on Amazon, and the book, there's a lot of different places on the internet that you can pick up the book, not just Amazon, but there's a lot of other places. Mm-hmm. And the book is either in a hardback or softback or an ebook. And so it's, the book sells very well. I sell a lot of copies, even though I don't promote the book anymore. You know, I wrote the book in 2009, and it's for a self-published book. It's done quite well.
Now, you mentioned that you came close to death on 43 separate occasions, but on one occasion, the reality of death really hit home. You were struck by a shell in your left leg and almost died on one particular day. I mean, really in serious condition. Tell us about that.
Well, I was wounded on May 12, 1969. That's the first chapter in the book. And I was shot by a Cobra helicopter in a battle. We were fighting against 400 NVA soldiers. And we fought all day long. And that night, I got shot by a Cobra helicopter in both my legs, both my thighs. I took 2 20-millimeter rounds, one in each thigh, and I almost had both my legs completely blown off. And I survived everything, and they saved my legs, which was unbelievable. And so it took me a long recovery period of time. I mean, a lot of hard work in order to get back to a normal situation.
How's that leg today?
Both my legs. I'm in pain right now. I've endured 50 years of pain since then. I'm used to pain. I don't take any medication for it, and it's just it's a way of life for me.
Now, you mentioned when you came back at that time, of course, the war was very unpopular. It's really the only war that America did not win. I don't like to say America lost that war, but we didn't win it. We kind of pulled out after a great loss of blood and treasure. 58,000 men dead as a result. You came home, and how did you deal initially with the reaction of I don't know, friends, neighbors, people that... Were you ashamed to tell people that you were a Vietnam vet when you came home? Did you keep it a secret? Or?
Well, first of all, the military did not lose that war. Basically, we won the war. The politicians lost the war, and the government lost the war. basically after Tet, we had annihilated the enemy. They lost close to, I think, 1 million people, and they were ready to give up. And when Nixon had the bombing, if he would have continued another week, all the higher ups in Vietnam said that they would have ended the war. They would have stopped. The politicians lost it. When I was down in my, we had the enemy forced down to 20% in the Mekong Delta. Man, there was nothing left of them. We had almost annihilated them. When we came back, I didn't talk about the war because of there was so much hatred from the Vietnam veteran. We were all portrayed as baby killers, drug addicts, you know, just worthless people, really. And I had the highest respect for all the men that I served with because they were, I mean, they were the type of guys that you go to Sunday school with, you know. And they were hardworking kids and did one heck of a job. Were tremendous fighters, and but the media didn't portray us like that. There was nothing good said about us, and I mean, we did a lot of good deeds in Vietnam, and I was in a lot of situations where helped families out and did medical things and tried to do our best, you know, to help the people while we were fighting the war, as soldiers do now today's. And you don't read about all the good things that they do, but so it was difficult coming back. I kept to myself like everybody else did, and because I didn't want to get into a fight or a conflict with somebody when I realized that they didn't understand what they were talking about.
So Jim, does your book go a long way in changing that perception, correcting that perception? Well,
I tell you what. When I wrote this book, I expected a lot of negative response from people, and I expected hate mail, I expected threats, a lot of things because of what it was like, you know, back in the 60s and 70s. And I've never had one negative comment about this book. I've had women, children, you know, I've had senators, congressmen, presidents of colleges, everybody you can think of, ministers, read this book, and they all come back with a greater insight of what the war was like, and thank me for writing the book, and I've been very pleased. And the one thing the book has done, it's really helped a lot of veterans. I've helped 20 veterans get VA compensation. I've helped a lot of veterans post-traumatic stress syndrome, and I've helped a lot of veterans' families from this book. A lot of families didn't know what happened to where their sons were killed. I wrote about how they were killed in the book, and they thanked me for it because they were told otherwise by the military what happened, and they got the true story in this book of what actually happened. So there's been a big healing process in many aspects from this book, which I never expected.
And time heals wounds. Would you agree that the perception of Vietnam veterans today has changed? I think, at least from my perspective, I think now our populace looks upon you guys as heroes. I mean, you fought bravely despite the odds and despite the unpopularity of the war, and you did your job and you did it well. Would you agree that things have changed over the decades?
Yes, they have. They've changed immeasurably, and thank God for that. I think the Vietnam veterans had a lot to do with the change.
Yes.
Because when the wars, you know, overseas in the Middle East happened, the Vietnam veterans got together and made sure that the way that these new veterans were coming back, they wouldn't be treated the way we were. Mm-hmm. So they had a lot to do with changing the perception of veterans in the public view.
Would you truly describe your service then, and even now with the guys that you're still in contact with, are you truly a band of brothers?
Oh.
It's not just a cliche.
Yeah. we're more than a band of brothers.
You're a family?
Yeah, we're family. And our wives and our children are too. It's amazing. I've been to so many reunions, and we're going to have our 50th reunion in Melbourne, Florida, coming up next year for the platoon. And we've had company reunions and a lot of platoon reunions. We've had them all over the country, and we've been so close together. You know, and if somebody in our group dies, you know, I do my best to attend the funeral, and we always have a wreath of flowers and things that go, and I use the proceeds from the book to provide all that for the guys in my platoon.
Jim, would you advise young people to go into the service today, in the military service? Would you advise it? What would you tell them?
Yeah, it depends on the individual. I think the military now, I've been down to Columbia, South Carolina, where 9th Division does its training now, and I've been with the battalion commander, and he's taken me through all the training process. I've actually talked to the 3rd Platoon Delta Company.
Your company?
Of the 2nd and 60th, yeah. My platoon, you know, in training, and it's so much different now. They stress teamwork. They stress togetherness in doing things. There's not a big difference between officers and enlisted people now as there was when I was in. There's so much education that you can learn as far as the equipment. You have to be very bright now to be in the military. You know, they don't take just somebody off the street, because the equipment they have and everything they have is so much more sophisticated, and so the only problem with the military, if you get into a fighting unit, you can be called up many times.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's the only bad thing I would see about it. But otherwise, it's much better, you know.
Jim,
when I was in.
I know you've visited schools, you've visited my classroom several times, and the reaction, I think, to your presentation has always been highly positive. Many of the young people we teach in my particular field, the students are termed at risk. They've had trouble pass and challenging situations they lived through. Having been to war and having experienced a lot of darkness yourself, and death and destruction and you know, and fear for your own life, what advice could you give to a young person today who maybe looks out and doesn't see a bright future for themselves? They don't see themselves succeeding. What advice might you give those young people?
What I'd give them, and which I've done I think the 3 times that I've been here, is that they are very young, okay? And they have the whole life ahead of them. Life is a series of ups and downs. No matter who you are, you're going to have trying times. And the best thing to do is learn from those trying times and try to look at them as positive situations in your life. A lot of veterans looked at Vietnam as a really negative thing. They were very hatred about being there, and I wasn't that way. I looked at it. I had met a lot of nice guys. I became friends, and I respected them and honored them for what they did. And I looked at this situation. I tried to make the best of it, because I thought later in life it would help me out, and it has. It's helped me out many times. I was under a lot of stress and a lot of darkness then, and I've had situations in my life since then many times where it's helped me to cope and deal with things that happen in normal life, which happens to everybody.
Yes.
You know, your daughter could be in a car accident. We almost lost my daughter last year. She had a pregnancy that it was bad, and she was in the hospital, and she almost died. She almost died from her first pregnancy too. And we have one healthy grandchild, but it just, you know, dealing with your parents dying, and my mother-in-law just died, and it was a tough year for us last year. Just last month, we had 4 friends die, you know, and a couple of them had cancer. So when you get into your later life, you got to deal with all these things that happen, and not just in your later life. I lost a lot of friends. I lost my best friend in Vietnam, and he was 42 years old, you know, in a plane crash, and it devastated me. We were brothers, and so.
You answered my next question. So build on those hard times and
yes.
To, you know, you use those times.
Be positive about life. Be positive. A lot of bad things are going to happen to you. I've had a lot of bad things happen to me, and you know. But
you can learn from them. You can learn from those.
Career-wise or whatever, and it's going to happen to everybody. Yeah. You know, this today and age, and career-wise, people lose their jobs, and they think it's got something to do with them, and it really doesn't. You know, it's just the way things are nowadays. So
Jim, no regrets at this point. Your service, no regrets.
No. I'm glad I served, and all the men that served with me feel the same way. They're glad they served. And one thing about fallacy about Vietnam veterans, they said, oh, they're all drug addicts and they all have problems. There's no drug addicts in my platoon, and we were all combat veterans. We all raised families, and we're all happily married many years, and you know, it's been so a lot of that stuff that you read in the media is as far as I'm concerned, it's a hoax.
Again, the book is Enter and Die by James W. Milliken. Jim, thank you so much for your time today.
And Charlie, thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.